Public comment. Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Eric, for allowing public comment without stopping people who wish to address the board. Some people in the past have been escorted out when they did. Fairly sure that you all know that I'm Mark Brown's wife, Bonnie, and I want to address WCND's taking 13 months, actually 4 years, to clear Mark's name and clear in Mansfield Point in a more timely manner. Mark has certainly offered multiple times over the past year for you to see his personal records. What happened at the last meeting, even Ron's leaving Mansfield Point off the agenda as Mark had requested during the previous meeting, should have been done months ago. A bit of history: Mark grew up spending most of his spare time at Port Mansfield, 73 years. His parents bought a house out there on a flatbed trailer in 48. Since he was born a few years later, it became his paradise, which is why he ran for and won election to the WCND 4 times. It's also why he chose to spend a lot of time, sweat, and hard-earned money to develop Mansfield Point, working by himself for almost 2 years to get permits from the Corps of Engineers, deal with grass studies, seawall construction, paying to have the Loran Tower moved, the only time an individual has done that in Corps history, and a lot of infrastructure, among other requirements. Then selling the leases to those 12 lots, which took almost 2 years before Spencer Gailey came alongside to invest in the project. The outcome is that from 1950 until 2004, the property where Mansfield Point is now located generated $0 in lease fees, $0 in boat stall lease fees, $0 in ad valorem taxes. Currently, it generates more than $1.8 million annually, with over $750,000 going to WCND alone over the past 16 years. In those 16 years, we've all contributed over $2 million to the local economy. In fact, we've all paid at least twice for the construction of those boat stalls with our lease fees. In the past year, you have not acknowledged any of that, choosing instead to allow Ron Mills and one of your board members to publicly assassinate Mark's character as if he had stolen that property. And 2 of you pointed your finger at him for not doing every single part of it with integrity and complete and total honesty and transparency with which he does everything. It's the reason he had a successful business and has had a stellar reputation here for 73 years. Instead of being accepted, you took an us and them approach as if we're the bad guys for doing what no one else thought to do or was willing to finance. What do you know about owning and running a business? Only one board member that I'm aware of knows about owning and running a business from experience. Your lack of that specialized knowledge is often on display here. Mark has it and he's used it very well. Ron knows that Mark was on the WCND board that hired him. In fact, Mark was on the board with the previous 3 port directors as well and had an excellent relationship with all of one except prior to Ron. With David Mayfield, whom Mark almost single-handedly investigated and later proved had embezzled over $100,000 from the navigation district, in which he paid back over time in lieu of going to prison. Frank Vasquez will vouch for this. Then Ron started out working with Mark and the board till Ron sometimes refused to do what he was hired to do, thinking that he knew more about it than Mark and the board at the time. When Mark took issue and tried holding Ron accountable on several occasions, Ron began his personal vendetta against Mark, and it continues today. It appeared then, and it appears now, that he doesn't want anyone else telling him what he needs to do in his job. Whether it's pride, arrogance, or something else, Ron couldn't or wouldn't admit that the board had authority over him. Almost a year ago, Ron composed a letter that Stacey then published on Facebook, attempting to incriminate and smear Mark's good name in the community and saying outright that he had stolen the property at Mansfield Point and had not paid what he owed for it. She even involved others in her smear campaign while Mark was running a clean campaign for election to the board. And by the way, left him. Even though you were Mark's opponent, you didn't do any of that, at least not that we were aware. So we appreciate your running a clean campaign. You see, Ron didn't want Mark back on the board because he knew that Mark would have held him accountable again for expenditures, decisions such as NAS, being responsible to the board, and he certainly wouldn't have okayed Ron's getting a regular paycheck while he ran for Congress and missed months of work while he campaigned. Although it was clearly a conflict of interest and Ron should have resigned his job to run, he didn't. But that's on the board that allowed it. It wasn't professional, nor was it ethical. All of this to say that although Ron and Stacey owe Mark a sincere apology, both personally and publicly, that would require integrity and humility. So I don't expect either of you to humble yourselves and to acknowledge that you were completely unethical and unprofessional in allowing that slander to be published and those lies about Mark to be perpetrated. I have known Stacey's family since she was in fourth grade, and I know that her parents taught her differently. What would any of you have done if somebody had come after your spouse like that? You don't think that way, do you? So regarding your approval to hire Border Affairs to assist with WCND's image problem, yes. The navigation district indeed has an image problem, but no amount of money, even $78,000, is going to repair the type of damage that has been done by the board of the previous 4 years. And incidentally, I'm not referring to what Eric and Steve have been trying to do, which is to attempt to right some of those wrongs. I want to remind all of you, including and especially those of you who call yourselves good Catholics or good Protestants, that waging personal attacks on someone without allowing them to provide evidence of their innocence is not what any court of law would do, and certainly not what Jesus would do. Our son said in November that Mark dodged a bullet by losing the election by 34 votes. And do you know what? I completely agree. Thank you.